Now we'll go through our last practice, evidence-based writing and language test, the passage portion. This one is going to be called The Age of the Drone. And of course, we still have 11 questions just like usual. Now the first question is concerning the sentence. Allow me to set the scene. You're coming home from school, walking toward your front door, and bam, a flying robot drops your oldest sister's just ordered DVD collection on your head. So they want us to find a better way of saying, bam, a flying robot drops your oldest sister's just ordered DVD collections on your head. Now usually when you have a word that shows a sound or a sight or a surprise, you need a pause, right? Bam, dash, then you say the rest of the sentence. To facilitate that pause, often a dash will be used because the dash is simply used for a pause. It gives no other meaning that might have grammatical implications. So in this case, the biggest mistake with this will be the separation between bam and the rest of the sentence. Now let's look at their suggestions. So obviously we need to change it. B, they did put a dash between bam and the flying robot. So that would be our preferred choice right now. The rest of the sentence also makes sense. C, they replaced the dash with a comma, so it says bam, comma, a flying robot drops. Now a comma would work in certain cases, but in this case a dash would be a little bit better because comma also usually signifies a separation of ideas. Two separate clauses usually, right? But in this case we don't have two separate clauses, we just have one with a sound introducing to it. So it wouldn't be the most appropriate. Also notice that it says your older sisters just ordered DVD. It does not include apostrophe in the word sisters. And we do need to end up apostrophe to signify possession of the DVDs. So C is out. D is a similar case. It uses a colon, which is acceptable in certain formats. But again, in this case, we're not trying to list attributes of something. So we will rather use a dash instead. And also, it put an apostrophe after the S in sisters, the last S. So it signifies that they have multiple sisters, in which case it is not the case. So we cross out D, and the choice is B. Number 2, throughout the years of the past, comma, drones have been controlled remotely. So they want us to come up with a better way of saying throughout the years of the past. Obviously, as soon as you read that, it's very redundant. If you're talking about the past, why would you say throughout the years of the past, right? Throughout the years is equal to the past. No need to say it twice. So we need to simplify this vastly. Let's look at their answer choices. We need to change it. B, in the past years of history. And in fact, I'm just going to read C and B together. C says, in the decades of the past. Both of these are very similar and both of these are very wrong. Why? They're complicated, perhaps even more so than the original sentence. In the SAT, one quick tip is that whenever they say of something, it's usually not the right answer. Because if they say of something, they can usually just say history's past years, right? A lot more direct. And in the SAT, as we mentioned a lot previously, complicated means wrong. So the key terms in this case is that both of them said of and both of them repeat themselves again. So we cross out both B and C. That leaves us with the correct answer D, which is historically. Simplifies it tremendously, and it's only one word at the same time. And it conveys all the meaning that we could possibly have, right? So that should be our answer, D. Nice and simple. 3. In World War II, comma, it became common practice to use drones to fly attack missions. Now, is there anything wrong with the phrase to use? Not really. In fact, I think it's actually preferred because as it became a common practice. What is the practice? When it has a practice or a habit or anything that goes on for a long sort of time, you usually use the phrase to something, right? It is usually my habit to bake. It is usually my habit to brush my teeth in the morning. So let's look at their suggestions. B, in use. In use signifies a condition. Now, we're not talking about a condition. We're talking about a practice, something that you do, right? In use, you could say the restroom is in use. The restroom has a condition. But then we're talking about a practice, which is usually denoted by to something. So B is wrong. C, for the using. Right away is way more complicated than it needs to be. It became common practice for the using to fly, for the using drones, and it becomes syntactically incorrect too. Because if you're going to use this, you must say for the using of, right? Because again, we're talking about a practice. not legitly something, another purpose. So for the using is wrong. D, while using. It became common practice while using drones to fly attack missions to what? If you put while using or while use drones to fly attack missions to something, this becomes a description of a certain practice, and that's not what we're trying to do. And by the way, notice how it says while use. If we're going to use it correctly, we have to use the phrase while using something to. So this is wrong so many levels, it's just not even feasible. So we remain with our original answer, which is A. 4. In recent years, we've seen drones move into other fields such as photography. We've seen is a phrase that we want to alter. Is there anything wrong with we've seen? They have apostrophe between the W, between the E and the V in the middle. So we extend that. It's we have seen drones moving to other fields. And it makes sense because they're talking about a practice that has happened in the past and has continued on into the present and hopefully into the future. And that's where we use, I think they call it a perfect present, where we have used something, right? And we want to keep that meaning in the same sentence. Let's look at their suggestions. B, we've saw. Right away, this does not make any sense because you cannot use a past verb with the word have. You cannot say we have saw something. You only can say I had seen something, right? So this is grammatically not correct, B. C, we have sawed. Right away, sawed is not a word. You cannot past tense a past tense, right? So right away, it's wrong. And D, we had saw. You cannot say that. You have to say we had seen, because why would you say both the word had and saw indicate a moment in the past? And if you use had something in conjunction, that means you want to denote a time phrase. And in this case, you would say we had seen. And even if we said we had seen, it still wouldn't make any sense because again, in the past, it's continuing up to this point, right? It did not just end in the past. So on multiple levels, choice B, C, and D are all wrong, and it is best to stick with the original, choice A. Number 5. In fact, researchers project that between 2015 and 2030, the economic impact of drones will roughly triple. The question asks, which choice represents an accurate interpretation of the information in the graph? The graph is on page 292. And this is actually very simple because they're not asking you to correct grammar or anything like that. It's simply look at the data and see which one is correct. In this case, it is not correct because 2015, there's about 1.5 billion. 1.5 billion. And 2030, there's around 6.5 billion. Right away, that's a little bit more than 4 times the amount that they can use, the amount they use. And they said triple, right? So the original is out of the way. B suggests that between 2015 and 2020, the economic impact will roughly quintuple. So talking about multiply by 5 times between 2015 and 2020. 2015, 1.5 billion. 2020, 4 billion. That is less than 3 times. So B is wrong. C, 2015 and 2030, it says it will double. 2015, 1.5 billion. 2030, 6.5 billion. That's more than 4 times. So C is wrong. So D is our only remaining answer, and that is indeed correct. It says 2015 and 2025, it will quadruple. 2015's 1.5 billion times by 4 is equal to 2025's 5.5 billion. Or about equal to 2025's 5.5 billion. So D is our closest answer, and it is our correct answer. 6. The writer wants to address the reader's potential objection that using UAVs will be unsafe. Which option will most clearly specify or specifically accomplish this goal? So we want a sentence that can address the reader's worries that it may be unsafe, and we want to address how it will accomplish this goal. So it has to talk about how drones will be safe in the future, right? So let's read our choice A. Unmanned aerial vehicles are clearly safe for the majority of uses for which they are intended. Now, this does not talk about how they want to accomplish this goal. So we cross it out. It only talks about, oh, it will be all right. It did not talk about how it will be all right. And it's actually the similar case with B too, because B also only assures the readers. It does not talk about how it will accomplish that assurance. With their multi-year track record of safe use in this way, consumer and safety advocates have little cause for alarm. It doesn't talk about what they specifically do to mitigate this possible danger. C. These micro drones will be programmed with destinations before liftoff and use navigation systems to avoid permanent obstacles like buildings and trees. This is what we're looking for. It says that it will avoid permanent obstacles, so it assures that it wouldn't happen, and it talks about how it will accomplish that goal. Program with destinations before liftoff, right? So it checks off our boxes, and we circle that for now. D. It is highly unlikely that drone usage will result in gradual decline in societal norms for moral behavior. Moral behavior isn't even discussed. It's not even the word we're trying to address in the first place. It is vastly out of place in the context, and it does not talk about how it will do that. So D is wrong, perhaps the most wrong out of all of them, and we cross that out. C is our answer. 7. Yet, drone engineers and robotics have their way. These human operators won't be necessary for long. So right away, this sentence does not make any sense. The only way this sentence will make sense is yet, if something, right? Then these human operators wouldn't be necessary for long. They're talking about possibility, and then what that possibility will accomplish. You can't say yet, drone engineers have their way. These human operators wouldn't, because if it doesn't add the word if inside, it suggests that drone engineers and roboticists already have their way. That is not the case. So we're looking for the addition of if into the sentence. We obviously need to change it. We'll cross out A. B. If drone engineers and roboticists have their way. This is exactly what we're looking for. Indicates a possibility. And in the second part of the sentence, these human operators won't be necessary for long. It's a result of that possibility. So we circle that for now. C. Drone engineers and roboticists. This wouldn't even make any further. This would even make less sense because it doesn't even talk about what the robotics engineers would even do, right? And it doesn't add the word if inside, so we cross that out. D. If they have their way. That is also very wonderfully and grammatically correct. However, even if they added if, they did not mention who are the they, right? If you mention they, and that's a quick tip for all of grammar, for SAT and your life, if you add a pronoun, especially a person's pronoun into it, for example, they, he, she, or even it, you have to mention clearly what the pronoun replaces beforehand. You cannot confuse the reader by playing the pronoun game, saying they, because it will confuse them, right? Who are the they? So that's why D is not correct. They did not specify who they were. And B is our only choice that's acceptable. 8. Aurizon, Australia's largest rail company, uses drones to survey its entire transportation infrastructure. So the word we're trying to change is its. So is there anything wrong with its? It's spelled ITS without an apostrophe in any of it. So if it has no apostrophe in any of it, it would mean possession. It would indicate possession, right? In this case, the rail company possesses its infrastructure. So there's really not anything that we should delete or we should add or we should change about this particular phrase. So A, we will circle that for now. B, its was apostrophe between the it and the s. When there's apostrophe between the it and the s, it signifies that you need to pull this apart and change it to it is. So would it make sense if we say survey it is entire transportation infrastructure? It makes no sense. So we cross that out. C, its with apostrophe after the S. Now the only way this will make sense is if there's multiple rail companies, right? No, you know what? No. It's with apostrophe after is not a thing. It is simply not a word, so we cross that out as well. D, it is. It is simply another way of saying choice B, it's with apostrophe. And if B is wrong, then D is also wrong. And our choice left was A, which is the original. 9. Aurizon utilizes a drone in order to maximize its corporate bond valuation. Oh, let's read the whole sentence. When a job is too dirty, too dangerous, or too inaccessible, Aurizon utilizes a drone in order to maximize its corporate bond valuation. The question asks, which choice gives the most logical justification for using a drone based on the rest of the sentence? So right now, the original sentence, it justifies it because they say using a drone maximizes their profit, essentially. And what does this whole entire sentence, whole entire paragraph have to do with profit? Before in the sentence, it talks about how the job might be too dangerous, too dirty, or too inaccessible for human operators. So we want something that addresses that part of the sentence. So we clearly need to change it. We'll cross out A. B. Instead of employing outside janitorial services. Now, janitorial services may address the too dirty aspect, but it doesn't address the other parts of it, too dangerous or too inaccessible. So it is still not good enough for us. So we cross it out. C. That is machine controlled by a man. Now it talks about how the drone will be flown, how it will be controlled, but doesn't talk about why it uses the drone, right? So it still doesn't address the previous part of the sentence. Therefore, we cross it out. D. Rather than risk the safety of its employees. Now this is what we're talking about right here. It addressed the previous few needs. It talks about how it's too dangerous, too dirty, or too inaccessible. And that is why it wants to minimize the risk and maximize the safety of its employees. Thus, D is the only choice that addresses all the aspects of the sentence prior to the segment they're trying to make us change here. So we choose D, and we move on to number 10. In fact, company leaders are so confident in the implementation of micro-drones, they're predicting a 50% extermination in operational failures. Now this word, while it does make grammatical sense, and people probably know what you mean, they probably mean that predicting a 50% decrease in operational failures, right? This sounds awkward, and there's better. Extermination is when you eliminate something, like physically eliminate something. Extermination of ants, of bugs, things like that. That's not what we're trying to say. We're talking about operational failures and 50% usually a decrease, right? So we want to find a better word for it. In this case, we just read through it, plug in and chug, and see which one makes the most sense when you speak it out loud. A, no change. No, extermination sounds too awkward. B, decrease. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we will circle that for now. C, less. They are predicting 50% less in operational failures. This is the same case with extermination. It would work, but it wouldn't be the most, how would you say this? It wouldn't be the most flowing out of your mouth sort of thing, right? It doesn't make the most sense when you speak it out loud. There's a better word. When people talk about a decrease in failures, they're talking about decreasing failures, right? Not 50% less failures. D, fewness. Fewness is not a word. So D is out of the way. Thus, the choice that most makes sense to us and most flowing with the style of the whole sentence and also English grammar in general is B, decrease, right? So let's look at 11 now. And NASA believes that this is to change rather quickly. They want us to alter the word and. The word and they placed at the beginning of the sentence. While this technically could be done, it is suggested that we don't do it in any sort of in your writing or in article writing. It's considered sloppy penmanship or sloppy writing. So we will most likely want to cancel out the word and to replace with something else. And quickly, if we look at the answer choices, there are to, but, and with. So all of these connects with the past idea, right? So let's read the previous sentence as well. While all of this sounds promising, it's hard to take in from the currently droneless day-to-day we live in. The second sentence, the sentence we're talking about is NASA believes that this is to change rather quickly. So we see a contradiction of this right here. This is usually the case day to day, but NASA thinks that it's about to change, right? So we want something that shows a contradiction of ideas. Choice A, we need to change it, so it's out of the way. B, to. To, NASA believes that this is to change. To is also not a word that you put at the beginning of the sentence, and it will not make sense because to doesn't show a contradiction. It can show a change, but it doesn't show a contradiction. So to is out in two ways. C, but. This is exactly what we're looking for. It shows us two different ideas. The second idea contradicts or has an argumentation with the first idea, in which this is the case. D, with. With links two different ideas into one single idea, right? I want to go to the movie theater with people and eat some cakes or something like that. It links it all into one action, one idea. In this case, we have two very different and contradicting ideas. So we will not use the word with. And thus, C is the best answer. And with that, we conclude our final practice section for the grammar portion, or as the SAT, the new one calls it, the evidence-based writing and language test. Again, 11 questions very quickly. There's really no need to read the entire passage. But if you wanted to get a good sense of it, you could. This isn't like the critical reading section. You should have plenty of time to analyze just the one sentence or the one little segment in it. And again, quick tip, to remind you, simple is better. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.